Hello, welcome to MTG Deck Tech. As promised yesterday, we're gonna take a look at the matchups of Boros Feather and what you have to look out for in these matchups, how good you will play against these decks. And I'm just gonna go through the MTG Goldfish standard metagame decks and just tell you my thoughts on these matchups relating to the Boros Feather deck. If you haven't watched my video on the Boros Feather deck, you might want to watch that one first because it's what this video is based on. I'm just going to talk about what this deck does against these decks, so you might want to watch it if you are not familiar yet with Boros Feather. So let's just start at the beginning. We have an Esper Hero deck here. This is standard deck that has been played for a few months now. It is based on Hero of Precinct 1, which of course makes some tokens whenever a multicolored spell is played. And you have a lot of multicolored spells here, of course, Deputy of Detention, Elite Guard Mages. Some people play the Basilica Bellhounds instead of the Guard Mages, but it's the same thing basically. You have both Teferis, of course, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, will cycle out, so we don't have to worry about him in a month. But then again, we might not be able to play our deck because of Reckless Rage cycling out. The thing you'll be most afraid of in these decks is Teferi Time Raveler, who has the effect that you can only cast spells at sorcery speed. Since most of your deck is gonna be based on you casting things at instant speed, of course, this will be a great detriment to your game plan. So what you want to do is get rid of Teferi as quickly as possible. This will be the main focus of your strategy. And of course, you will be able to get rid of Teferi most of the time since the Esper Hero deck doesn't play that many creatures. The creatures that it plays mostly don't have flying, except for this Elite Guard Mage, but you can get rid of the Elite Guard Mage, for example, with Reckless Rage. So if you have your Feather redeemed on the field and you can attack with it, it can be fine against Teferi Time Raveler, but otherwise it's a really tough deck to play against. Mainly because most of the times when I fail against this deck, I just forget about the damn Teferi Time Raveler static, and I'm just playing stuff and not thinking about it. And yeah, this is something you always have to keep in mind. If Teferi is out on the battlefield, you just have to think twice as hard on how you sequence your cards before combat to get rid of these goddamn Teferis. Banned Ramp is a similar thing with the Teferi Time Raveler because it's a banned deck. It also has the Teferi Time Raveler. You also have a lot of mana ramp like Llanowar Elves, Leafkin Druids, Paradise Druids, etc. And you will have big creatures like the Hydroid Krasis to deal with. So Nissa is also a problem. So the main thing you have to watch out for is big Hydroid Krasises, so get rid of these mana dogs so that it can't ramp a really big Hydroid Krasis and run you over with it. Another thing to watch out is Nissa, of course. You'll have to get rid of Nissa very quickly unless you want her to make a lot of land tokens, land creatures. Which is very bad, of course, if you want to win with creatures in the combat phase, which you want to do as Boros Feather. But Nissa is not as hard as other cards. So as Reckless Rage does 4 damage, it is more than enough to kill these Nissa lands. And so it will be possible for you with the right amount of creatures to get rid of Nissa pretty nice, pretty easily. So I don't think Banned Ramp is a very difficult deck to play against. You just have to watch out for your opponents that they don't get their big creatures, their big Hydroid Krasis on the battlefield, and you will be fine. Kefis Combo is something I have not played a lot against. It's based on comboing off some historic cards. I never actually seen the combo against me because I always won before they got the combo off. Of course, anytime you're gonna have a deck that has a very specific cards that say like, oh, legendary spells do that with legendary spells, or do that with this kind of card, you'll always have to watch out for a combo deck. So if you have a combo deck against you, you will want to get rid of the combo pieces as quickly as possible. You can do that by reckless raging away their creatures. So this combo deck is not as hard to play against as other combo decks, which rely on artifacts or enchantments, which you cannot get rid of that easily as the Boros Feather deck. Come to think of it, you can't get rid of them at all, so you will need to win quickly against those decks. But against creature combo decks, it's a little more chilled. You can get rid of the creatures. You'll also need to win quickly because you don't want to get comboed off, but it will be much easier than other decks to play against. Ores of Vampires. So this is one of the most widely played in the format, I think. It's a very aggressive deck, but it also can be can get very big creatures on the field. For example, Champion of Dusk is pretty big, but it's not big enough to evade a Reckless Rage, so you will have a lot of chances to get rid of these creatures. You will just need to watch out to not get run over by a turn-free Sorin, Champion of Dusk combo, etc. If the Sorin does use its -3 ability, it will be easy to shock away. So it's nice that you have shock in your deck to get rid of these planeswalkers. But yeah, most of the time you will have a pretty okay time playing against Ores of Vampires. What is pretty annoying is the Legion's End. Legion's End exiles possibly up to 4 creatures if you happen to have like 4 Legion war bosses or district legionnaires in your hand. It will get rid of all of them, so you will have to watch out for that. Otherwise, it is pretty harmless because, of course, you have the cast downs that can't get rid of the Boros because it's a legendary card. Some will play Mortifies, which of course can kill the Feather, but mostly it's the Legion End that will be played as the removal in these aggressive decks. And you will have a pretty fair time against those Ores of Vampires, not very much to be concerned about, as long as they don't run away with like a big Knight of the Ebon Legion. You will have to get rid of them pretty fast because they stack their +1/+1 counters, and you don't want that. But otherwise, you can pretty much easily kill these decks. So Bandscape Shift is a really, really bad matchup for you. I just, as I said in the last video, I just included Flame Sweep especially to deal with those decks because they can get so many tokens on the battlefield. Playing their Scape Shift, you will have a really bad time because you don't have any counter magic to counter it. So you just have to hope you get your Flame Sweep or you kill them before they do their Scape Shifting. And that can be hard because they also play Teferi Time Raveler. So it's a very, very hard deck. I don't have a really good strategy against them. It's always very hard as a Boros deck to win against them. You'll just have to wait. You just have to hope that you get a quick hand. You can quickly kill them and get rid of those decks. You don't want to play against them. So at all. It's a very, very hard counter. Next up, we have a classic deck that I used to play a lot. I also got to Mythic with it a few seasons ago. It's a mono-red aggro, mono-red burn, something like that, that wants to go off with big experimental frenzies and a lot of spells, a lot of creatures to kill you, big runaway Steamkins. But it's not a very difficult matchup. As long as they don't kill you in the first 5-6 turns, you're most likely gonna win this thing because you will be able to kill everything in that deck, including the runaway Steamkins, which can at the most get to a 4/4, and you will have a lot of chances to get rid of anything in that deck, except for the experimental frenzies. But even if they have an experimental frenzy on the battlefield, most of the times it will not be enough. Also, you play some life gain. I included the life gain cards, which will help you in the early rounds. Just survive the early onslaught of the red deck, and if you can do that, you will be very, very fine. Next, we're gonna have the mirror matchup. Mirror matchups are always, it's not much to say about them. You know what the deck does if you played the deck a long time. You know what the opponent wants to do. You know what you want to do, and you just have to execute better than your opponent. So it's not much about it. You will have to try to get around their God's Willing and their Sheltering Lights to get rid of the feathers, but at the same time you want to protect your own feather, so you will have to work around your mana base, try to play in the right way, try to sequence your cards right, and then you will have a great time playing against the mirror match, because they don't counter you, because you're basically playing the same deck. Yes, not much more to say about that. Next, Mono Blue Temple. So MTG Goldfish, for some reason, I think it's based on a tournament wins, so that might be the reason why they didn't include Simic Flash. I see more fit Simic Flash right now on Arena than Mono Blue, but it's basically the same. They try to win at your turn, basically. Try to place spells when you have the turn. They try to counter you. They try to combat trick you. They're trying to make your life a living hell. And yeah, they basically will succeed at that, because Boros Feather is not very nice, not very good card against counter decks. It also goes for Esper Control or something like that. Decks that are gonna play some counter magic will be very bad matchups for you. So what you want to do is kill them as quickly as possible, of course, but also watch out for possible counter spells. You will want to bait out spells like an Essence Scatter, if they have that, to counter your creatures, with some creatures that you don't need, and you will keep your Boros and other cards that are important to yourself until you are sure that they don't have either mana to play the counter spells, or no cards in hand, or few cards in hand, so you have to take a bit of a gamble, but not too much. So in the first turns, you will not want to play your biggest cards, your most important cards, because they can just destroy them. You will also have to watch out for that in the later rounds. As I said in the last video, if your spell doesn't resolve, Feather the Redeemed cannot bring it back. So you will have to watch out for counter spells even when you have your feather on the battlefield. And yeah, it basically comes down to if the Mono Blue or the Simic Flash draws the right cards, they will probably win against you. But if they don't, you can run them over pretty easily. So it's somewhat of a counter, but it's not as bad as the Bandscape Shift or anything like that. Giant Dinosaurs is pretty much an even matchup against you. They want to beat you down with big creatures and use the Marauding Raptor, which can deal damage to other dinosaurs and get bigger because of it. So you want to get rid of these Marauding Raptors because they synergize well with things like the Ripjaw Raptor, which has Enrage. Whenever it's dealt damage, you draw a card. So yeah, of course, the Marauding Raptor will damage it as soon as it gets into the battlefield, and the opponent will get a free card. So you want to get rid of the Marauding Raptors. You will watch out for the mana base of the opponent, so they don't cast Galta, because you'll not be able to get rid of Galta as a red deck. Sorry about that. But even the Rotting Regisaur is very hard to get rid of, because you will need to play a Reckless Rage and a Shock, or 2 Reckless Rages, or 3 Shocks, or something like that, which can get very crazy, depending on how much mana you have. So yeah, this is a deck you want to beat down fast. You want to kill its creatures as often as possible, and then you will be fine. It comes down to what cards are drawn. If your opponent has a good hand, there's nothing you can do about it. Well, you can say that about any matchup, but especially when they have very big creatures, you're not gonna be able to do anything against that because you don't have any board wipes. Grixis control is, yeah, pretty much the same as Esper control. It doesn't have the Teferi Time Raveler, which is nice, so you don't have to worry about that. Nicol Bolas Dragon God can be a very hard card, but against you, it's not as bad because you can get rid of some of the lands when it does its +1, because you'll most likely have more lands than you'll need, because you don't have any big spells you want to cast that cost a lot of mana. And yeah, you will just try to outplay their damn removal spells, because they're gonna have a lot of removal spells and you will need to get as many cards onto the battlefield as possible so they can remove them all. That's basically it. You will want to protect your feather, you will want to play anything like you will do otherwise, and because it's a control deck, you will have to beat it down quickly, otherwise it's gonna just beat you down with big planeswalkers, and yeah, you're not gonna have a good time. Golgari Citadel is something I did not see very much in Arena. I mostly see that combined with Command the Dreadhorde, but even that is not very much in the meta right now, I think. You of course have the Wild Growth Walkers that can get very big, so you'll want to get rid of them first and very quickly, because if they have other creatures that explore, which they will have a lot of, for example Jade Light Ranger, they can get out of hand very quickly. If you can kill the Wild Growth Walker, for example with Reckless Rage or 2 Shocks, you will be fine. That's really all that is to the deck. You will want to kill it very quickly, so they can cast the Command the Dreadhorde or the Bolas the Citadel or other big mana spells, and you will want to get rid of things like the Llanowar Elf, so they can't get to the mana point as quickly. Golgari Stompy, it's basically just mono green Stompy with a Raska thrown in here in this meta game. Yeah, it's basically the same as against the Dinosaurs. You want to get rid of the creatures fast. Of course, you'll have Nissa and stuff like that, and Vivian. You'll want to get rid of those fast. It's a very basic Magic play. I don't think I'll have to talk about that very long. Get rid of the creatures, get rid of the mana creatures. Always think about, do I want to prioritize damage to them or damage to the creatures, the planeswalkers? And do I want to play the shock and get rid of the Llanowar Elf, or do I want to keep my shock for possible Nissa? That will depend on how the matchup is going, how your hand is looking. It's hard to get general recommendations on that. It's just standard Magics, not much to look out for. You just have to have a better hand and play better, and you will be fine against this matchup. I don't have many problems against that, except if they have Galta and they get it out somehow. Of course you're gonna lose, but otherwise it's pretty fine. So yeah, these are all the meta decks on MTG Goldfish. I think that covers most of the meta, although they don't have like Simic Flash, but Simic Flash is basically mono blue with some better creatures, so you will be fine against that if you can play against mono blue. Overall, I say Boros Feather is a very nice deck. It's an, I think, S-tier deck against most of the decks in the format, so you'll have a very nice time playing against those decks. Those decks I mentioned that are very dangerous, Bandscape Shift and things like that, you can't really do anything against. You just have to hope that they get a bad draw or that you get a really good draw and you can win this. Otherwise, you're just gonna have to take the losses against these ones. Yeah, that's basically it. So thank you for watching. If you stuck with us until this point. And next time I'm gonna make a video, I'm gonna show you some gameplay of Boros Feather. Gonna play some ranked. This will be very fun. Okay, so see you until then, and hope you like it, subscribe it, follow me on Twitter if you like this video and you want me to do other videos On other decks, I plan on doing some on Mono Black, which I played a lot and got to Mythic with. So yeah, thank you for watching, and until the next time on MTG Deck Tech.